2,000 miles of coastline, a single economic lifeline for millions of people locked deep inside the African continent. For decades, the contest for that trade has been framed as a simple geography test. Look north, and you see the entrenched king of East African shipping. The port of Mombasa, which handled 45.45 million tons of cargo in 2025. Look south, and you see a challenger that is no longer simply building a bigger port. It is building an alternative route into the heart of the continent. This is not a localized dispute over dock space or regional bragging rights. This is the primary commercial fault line of East Africa. And yet, asking which port is winning this war at the water's edge misses the entire point. Because this isn't a war between two ports, it's a war between two routes to Africa's interior. To understand why Tanzania is spending billions to catch up, you have to look at why Mombasa stayed dominant for so long. For over a century, Mombasa has been the economic lungs of Kenya and its landlocked neighbors through what is known as the Northern Corridor, a multimodal transport network feeding cargo into Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Backed by the standard gauge railway slicing from the coast up to Naivasha, Mombasa promised unmatched scale. For generations of logistics planners, the Northern Corridor was the default setting. It had the institutional memory, the established clearing agents, the logistics networks, and the financial ecosystem. And this is where the story gets bigger. Because absolute dominance also bred structural friction. High transit costs, chronic border clearance delays, and friction-heavy bureaucracy have long plagued the Northern Corridor. Shippers hate delays. Every extra day a container sits at a border post or a weighbridge bleeds margin. And where there is friction, competitors smell blood. Enter the challenger, the port of Dar es Salaam, anchoring Tanzania's central corridor. Tanzania looked at Kenya's chokehold on the north and realized something fundamental. Cargo always follows the path of least resistance. Dar isn't simply catching up. Tanzania is attempting to redraw the map of where East Africa's interior connects to the ocean, plunging deep into Central and Southern Africa, tapping directly into Zambia, Malawi, Burundi, Rwanda, and beyond. The strategy was bold, but for a long time it remained theoretical. But here's the catch. Geography alone doesn't move containers. For years, Dar es Salaam was choked by shallow berths and agonizingly slow vessel turnaround times that routinely dragged out logistics chains. Having a massive footprint means nothing if ships are forced to queue for days, waiting outside a congested harbor. Which raises the crucial question: can Dar turn infrastructure into cargo? Through major infrastructure undertakings like the Dar es Salaam Maritime Gateway project, Tanzania didn't just tweak the edges, they completely re-engineered the hardware. They dredged and reinforced the entrance channel and berths 0 through 7 to a depth of 14.5 meters, allowing massive bulk and container vessels to dock directly without tidal restrictions. They overhauled the historic Central Line and backed it with heavy capital injections into railway modernization. As a result, operational costs dropped, turnaround times plummeted, and cargo throughput surged to a record 33.7 million tons in the 2025/26 financial year. And this is where the game changes entirely. Because Tanzania isn't just fighting for standard consumer goods and regional retail imports, they are positioning themselves to capture the most valuable, high-stakes cargo on the African continent. Look past East Africa's retail imports and you find the true prize, the Central African Copper Belt. Millions of tons of copper, cobalt, lithium, and critical green energy transition minerals pouring out of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia. Whoever controls the rail and port infrastructure that moves these minerals controls a critical financial artery of the region. Traditionally, much of this mineral wealth fought its way through southern routes or struggled up north through chronic congestion. But Tanzania's direct rail and road integration into the interior offers a streamlined pipeline straight to global markets. When you capture the mineral export market, you aren't just a regional port anymore. This isn't about East African consumer imports. It's about the global race for critical minerals. The port that moves Africa's minerals doesn't just serve Africa. It becomes part of the global energy supply chain. But there is a problem. Minerals don't move simply because a government builds a railway or pours concrete at a berth. They move because mining companies, international commodity traders, and global shipping lines decide that one route is cheaper, faster, and more reliable than another. And that changes the entire battle, because Tanzania can build the infrastructure, but can it actually convince the cargo to use it? And this is where the real power brokers enter the room. For the last 2 decades, China built much of the infrastructure story, laying rails, paving highways, and financing state-backed megaprojects across the region. But Gulf capital and global operators increasingly matter to the operational story. And now, the transformation is no longer theoretical. Under a 30-year concession agreement, global operators like Dubai's DP World stepped in with an initial commitment exceeding $250 million to modernize terminals at the port of Dar es Salaam. The results speak for themselves. By overhauling terminal operations and adopting specialized roll-on and roll-off procedures, DP World slashed cargo discharge times by more than 90%. Driving comparable turnaround down from over 300 hours to under 28 hours. Private operators can dramatically improve terminal efficiency and attract larger vessels, but an operator alone cannot solve every border bottleneck deep in the interior. Which brings us to the ultimate friction point. But there is one thing infrastructure cannot manufacture: proximity. You can dredge a harbor, you can build a railway, you can digitize customs, you can buy cranes, but you cannot move a country. And that brings us to the counterweight: geography. Because Dar es Salaam can modernize its port, Tanzania can rebuild its railways, global operators can improve the terminals, but you cannot move Zambia closer to Mombasa, and you cannot move Uganda closer to Dar es Salaam. The map still matters. Which means this battle may never produce a single simplistic victor, so perhaps the question was wrong from the beginning. Mombasa has the network, Dar es Salaam has the momentum, the Copperbelt has the cargo. Global capital has the money, but geography has the final vote. Because the battle between Mombasa and Dar es Salaam was never really about 2 ports, it was about 2 visions of Africa's future. One built on an established network, the other built on a new route south. One has history, the other has momentum. And behind both lies something far more valuable than containers: Africa's interior. Because whoever makes that interior cheaper to reach, faster to export from, and easier to connect to the world won't just win a port competition. They will shape the map of East African trade for decades to come. And that race is already underway.